Light is paced like a movie. Every mission starts off with Bond at the headquarters, getting briefed, getting some new toys. Then the second act consists of Bond charming people and or sneaking through, and it all ends with a big action sequence in the third act. That is pretty much the template for every mission. What this game does so well is all three of those acts in a mission are fun to play through. For a stealth action title, First Light has a lot of gameplay elements. There's only so much pointing and shooting one can do without getting burnt out. Every aspect of James Bond is a gameplay element here, from basic stuff like combat, driving, to cute cool toys. Even Bond's charm is a gameplay element here. You can bluff enemies, use some quick thinking to get away while the villain monologues. The only thing they could have improved is they could have let players fail more when they take the wrong decision. Sometimes these choices feel like they will end up at the same place regardless, so why even bother? Even the mission design is like that. At first glance, it looks like a big open area, but the game guides you through a predetermined path. That's not always the case, especially in the beginning of missions. You have a lot of freedom, but as you progress through the mission, you get funneled into a predetermined select way. Uncharted follows a similar level design. There are no mini-maps, no way markers pointing you, but the game masterfully pushes you in the right direction. But Uncharted 4 is rigid the entire way, as compared to First Light, which is Hitman-like in the first half of the mission and Uncharted-like in the second half. Where Uncharted still shines is how fluid movement feels. Nathan Drake is a treat to control. Traversal parkour is like the second most important thing. Climbing sections aren't much fun, but because they focused and worked on movement so much, it is very satisfying to control Nathan during combat or small free running sections. I still hate climbing though, not just in Uncharted but pretty much every game. It's so basic and so slow as well, without much for the player to add. Uncharted 4 has combat stealth driving just like First Light. Even the ratio of you doing those things is similar. Puzzles and climbing sections are given more focus. Uncharted has more varied gameplay, and other than climbing, they are fun. The first round goes to Uncharted 4. Combat in First Light is a bundle of fun. It is the Uncharted formula for sure, but being a spy adds a little more to combat. But the basics are the same. Staying in cover and shooting is not gonna work. Improvising is the name of the game. Constantly moving around, using the environment, unarmed combat, fancy gadgets, all of these mechanics blend in very well. I was surprised with that. Normally when there are lots of these mechanics, you stick to one or two and ignore the rest, but I've been using everything the game has to offer, not to try them out, but because they are very useful. I was in this firefight, started off on higher ground, taking enemies out with a sniper, then of course ran out of ammo, which happens a lot by design to keep players thinking on their feet. Then I switched to a handgun, which isn't very useful against 10 enemies with rifles. Who would have thought? I ran out of bullets again. I have no weapons at this point, so I throw my pistol at an enemy's head. He starts recovering, so I use my watch to hurt him again. Then a brutal fist fight in the middle of enemies shooting from everywhere, by the way. I beat the guy, pick his rifle up with my feet in the most James Bond-like way, use focus and eliminate remaining enemies. The only thing missing there was a one-liner. That's how action-packed this game is. Combat is challenging, keeps you 100% focused, and then rewards you for that focus with many little gameplay mechanics. Gunplay is really good, but hand-to-hand combat might be even better. Blocking is a little overpowered. That's the only complaint I have. Attacks and combos are brutal and satisfying. You have attack, counter and block of course, which are the usual, but animations are snappy. Camera is a little jittery because you are always moving around. Grabbing an enemy and throwing them has become my favorite thing to do. Depending on the object you're throwing them towards, the animation will change. Banging heads into a table or a wall, closing doors with enemies' heads in between, or just throw them off a roof or a plane. the higher the better. You hear them landing a few seconds later, it is always funny. Once you have beaten enemies up enough, you'll get the chance to perform finishes. You can also use your watch to incapacitate them for a few seconds to get the chance to do a finisher. And let me tell you, these finishers are plain brutal. This is like an action movie, fast paced, and while there aren't cuts every second, camera is unreliable, so you aren't gonna see what's happening anyway. Uncharted 4's combat is very underrated. It's unlike anything else. Third-person shooters are just cover shooters for the most part, which is okay, but that gets dull really fast. There is zero challenge or urgency. Rockstar makes masterpiece after masterpiece. Even they had a pretty basic combat system in RDR2. Combat in Uncharted is running around like headless chicken and surviving by the smallest of margins. But when you master combat and actively move forward, I cannot think of a game more exciting. Unarmed combat isn't as fancy as First Light, but it is challenging and more realistic. Attacks from behind are dangerous. You can't just sit and counter all day. The style of First Light coupled with Uncharted's realism would be perfect. Arkham games are good in this aspect, but these two games are more grounded, so it feels even more brutal. If you enjoy Uncharted 4's combat, you will love First Light. It is Uncharted with cool gadgets and almost as fast paced. This round I'm going to give it to First Light. It builds upon Uncharted's craziness and I personally loved using all of Q's toys. Driving is a small but very exciting part of these games. Anytime you are behind the wheel, you know you're in for a ride. Well, at least towards the end of a chapter. First Light's driving sections are either in big, slow cars where you're pressing the right trigger, begging the car to go faster, or they are chases at breakneck speeds. Driving in these two games feel very similar. Cars are very easy to maneuver, too easy in fact. Cars do not need time to turn at all. If you start turning before the turn, which is what you're supposed to do, you'll smack straight into a wall. When you're driving slow, this is a problem. High speeds, this starts working in your favor. Probably why developers made steering this way. These chases are very Uncharted-like again, filled with set pieces, no waypoints, everything feels cinematic. Even still, it is very hard to fail these sections, even if you're horrible at driving. I would have enjoyed combat's level of challenge while driving as well. I haven't enjoyed set pieces this much in any game since Uncharted 4. These are even bigger, they aren't as creative, but the scale and the carnage make up for it. This is coming from someone who doesn't really enjoy action, at least movie action, but in a video game it is exhilarating. I was already sold on the game, but after the plane sequence I was hooked. Uncharted 4 has the same pattern. Driving sections in the beginning are slower, more about finding your way. Towards the end of chapters you're usually getting chased, and Uncharted does this better than any game. In 2016 I couldn't believe a chase like this was possible, and now a decade later it feels just as impossible. I remember these sections to be more open, but they really aren't. That's the only thing I remember differently. Otherwise, they are just as awesome as I remember. Steering cars is like controlling an RC car. They don't feel like big, powerful machines. They are effortless to control, sure. Uncharted feels a little better in this regard. If you aren't braking and turning at the right time, the game has no problem making you pay. The thing I like most about this game are these set pieces. And the best ones happen when you're behind the wheel. Uncharted 4 wins this round. The story in First Light is already IO Interactive's best work. In the beginning, I wasn't paying attention, I didn't have high hopes, I was expecting a basic spy plot. But even with me paying little attention, the plot grabbed me. The game does a great job developing characters fast. In the first few hours, you'll already like at least a few characters. Then something major happens, which is where I was done paying little attention. I was hooked. James Bond is still the highlight for sure, even though he's very different from what we've seen in Bond movies. This is a young Bond, he's not as put together. The plot makes use of that. Bond isn't stoic, he's emotional, makes mistakes and loses confidence. This is the great thing about an origin story. It is very easy to get players invested. Uncharted 4's plot is nothing fancy. Going around the planet on a treasure hunt isn't something that's gonna have a huge impact on you. The story takes second stage to the locations and more importantly, the main characters. Nathan Drake is likable. Side characters I wasn't very invested. Cutscenes can be exposition dumps, but when you're in the field, little interactions, banter between characters always land. Sully and Nathan Drake, when they are on screen together, I was always paying full attention. The story is predictable with its betrayals and ending. I was more invested in Bond's journey. Bond himself is amazing, but I didn't expect the supporting cast to be such a treat. The overall story isn't reinventing the wheel, but interesting characters elevate the plot. This was a very close comparison. These two games are similar in terms of tone and quality. First Light might feel like a rip-off to Uncharted fans, but IO Interactive have put their own spin on it. I'm gonna go with 007 First Light. I was more invested with the story. I like the characters more. Gameplay has no boring sections at all. Click the video on screen to see a more in-depth look at 007 First Light. Let me know which game you think is better and why. Like, comment and subscribe and all that stuff. Thanks for watching and have a great day wherever you are.